there, and welcome to Power Play. I'm Vashi Capellos in Ottawa on this Wednesday. Tonight, 2 seats shy.
There probably are those that are in the same boat, but I will let them tell their stories.
A Conservative defection leaves the Liberals just 2 seats short of a majority government, with the MP in question saying, as you heard there could be more to come. What does it mean for the Conservative Party's leader? And do the Liberals really have a majority in sight? Scott Reid and Corey Teneycke are here together to talk about that in moments. Then, selling the budget.
While Canadians are already unable to eat, heat, and house themselves, why is this Prime Minister's costly budget making them pay even more?
This budget invests in Canada at twice the rate as any budget during this millennium.
Prime Minister Mark Carney insists his budget is as transformational as the government build it would be, despite economists saying otherwise. Does the budget meet the moment? Attorney General Sean Fraser will be here coming up, and I'm going to ask him. Plus, will the budget pass? The Liberals may be working behind the scenes to reach the majority they'd need to easily pass their budget. For now, though, they do need opposition backing to get it through. So will they get it? Our front bench is set to weigh in on that. Sharon Carr, Laura D'Angelo, Jamie Ellerton, and Sebastian Skamsky will all be here a little bit later on in the show. First, though. That is Prime Minister Mark Carney and his newest MP, Chris d'Entremont, walking into Liberal caucus this morning to a raucous round of applause. Just hours after yesterday's federal budget and after weeks of speculation, d'Entremont crossed the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals, now putting the Carney government just 2 seats shy of a majority. The Prime Minister and d'Entremont also spoke side by side at a post-budget press conference about whether there could be more floor crossers to come.
I'm honored to welcome him as the newest member of our government caucus. Chris's decision to join the government caucus at this crucial moment for our country is exceptionally valuable and important.
I would think over the last number of months, I wasn't feeling that I was aligned with the ideals of what the leader of the opposition had been talking about.
And just in terms of how many other Conservatives feel the same way that you do that are currently sitting in caucus?
Yeah, I would suggest that there probably are those that are in the same boat, but I will let them tell their stories if that time comes.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has yet to comment publicly on the floor crossing. Other Tories, though, are calling out d'Entremont, accusing him of turning his back on the party's election platform that he ran on just a few months ago.
6 months ago, he ran on an affordability agenda. He ran to lower deficits. He ran on a stronger economy, a pro-growth agenda, and he's turned his back on that. He's turned his back on his voters.
I think this says that Mr. d'Entremont is a man, if he plans to vote for this budget, that can't be taken at his word, and that should be incredibly disappointing, I'm sure it is, for his constituents.
Now, as far as who might be next, 2 of the names circulated as potential floor crossers seem to acknowledge as much today. One of them is Edmonton MP Matt Jeneroux. 2 Liberal sources tell us after d'Entremont, Jeneroux was the Liberals' next target for defection. Late this afternoon, however, his office sent us a statement that reads, quite simply, despite the rumors being circulated in Ottawa, MP Jeneroux is not crossing the floor and remaining a member of the Conservative caucus. And Quebec Conservative MP Dominique Vien's name has also been floated as a potential floor crosser. She posted a video to Facebook today saying that she's not going anywhere and reaffirming her commitment to the Conservative Party. So where does that leave both the Conservatives and the Liberals? Scott Reid is former communications director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. Corey Teneycke was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager and former director of communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Hi to both of you. Glad to see you on this weekday. Scott, I'll start with you. Both of you have experience, if I recall, with floor crossers going both ways. If you look, put it in a historical context, in your view, how significant is this one?
Pretty significant, particularly because of the added allure that there might be others. So we'll see if late day development suggests maybe that won't come to fruition. But if it did, then obviously it would be really significant if it actually delivered a de facto majority to Carney. That would change the landscape enormously and probably trigger a leadership crisis within the Conservative Party. But look, even without that, floor crossings. Like in politics, there are few events that are more disruptive, more destructive. They rip through a caucus like a dose of salts, and they create all kinds of questions and turmoil. So we're watching all that unfold today. You know, a caucus that at one point in its past has received floor crossers with open arms is now saying, my God, it's a betrayal of everything fundamental to politics. And people say the same thing when they're on the other end of it. So it's great sport if nothing else. But in this case, with a budget vote hanging in the balance, a confidence vote hanging in the balance, it does rise to the level of high drama.
Yeah, that's the interesting part here, right, Corey? We're facing down a confidence vote at a time when, as of yesterday morning, the government was, or the Liberals were 3 seats short of a majority, and now they're just 2. How big of a deal do you think it is?
Well, look, floor crossing. I kind of agree with what Scott said. It's not new to any of the parties in the House of Commons. It always leaves a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth of the party who's lost a caucus member and fills the one receiving them with glee. I don't think it's that meaningful in the sense that they're still short votes. Like close doesn't count when it comes to government confidence votes. You need to find those extra 2 votes. And I don't think that, one MP crossing a floor really changes the predicament for the government. Like they need a couple of people to stay away or a couple of people to vote for them. And right now, we're not hearing any clear indicator of either one of those things. So I think the drama and speculation will continue until that question's settled.
What does it say to you, Scott, that speculation is out there, though? And it has been in the ether for a few weeks. This is the first proof point that it wasn't all just rumor. And now it's, pretty specific that there could be a few more in the offing, so much so that it's not just rumor, that in fact, Chris d'Entremont himself suggested that was the case today.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the reason the floor crossings are such dramatic events, because they're a very personal statement. The people who cross the floor are making a personal statement, either about their own ambitions or, more importantly, about the leadership of the party they're departing. And so that's where people went to. That's where media immediately asked, Chris d'Entremont, like, so is this because you can't bear the leadership of Pierre Poilievre? Are you guys on diametrically opposed planes? And, he was polite about it. He didn't rub it in, but he made it clear that he's not on the same wavelength as Pierre Poilievre, and he suggested that others are not as well. So if there should be more defections, that's why it would trigger a leadership crisis for Poilievre. And I can tell you, I've been on both ends of this. I've welcomed people into our caucus, and I've watched people depart it. I can remember when David Emerson, who we recruited to run for Paul Martin, after we lost the 2006 election, accepted a position as a cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's government. And I remember feeling deflated, bit personally betrayed. You take this stuff personally, and you can bet that Pierre Poilievre and his operation right now, they are taking it very personally.
Yeah, from everything I hear, there's a lot of work going in behind the scenes to kind of prevent anyone else from making the same decision. In your mind, politically, Corey, or strategically, if there are more, how much of a different sort of political impact could there be, in particular, on Poilievre's leadership?
Well, it's clearly not a good thing to have happen to your leadership, but I think what the challenge is the polling numbers that show that the Conservatives are winning on virtually every issue except perhaps healthcare. Have a significant issue advantage, except for leadership, where they're polling behind, and so I think that's creating some pressure. Within the party and within the caucus, but I don't think it's pressure to the point where you're going to see a serious challenge to his leadership. Like, I expect that he's going to easily win the leadership test in January, and I don't think there's going to be a bunch of other people leaving caucus. I just don't think it's at that level yet. But I think it points to, the vulnerability that exists in a parliament that's this close. Like there's going to be a lot of pressure on MPs to stay where they are. There's going to be a lot of pressure on MPs to floor cross, and not just with the Conservative caucus. I think there'll be similar pressure on the NDP and the Bloc, although the Bloc's a little harder to get to defect.
Yeah, but they might be harder to convince. Do you think that's true, Scott?
Sure, I do think that's true, but I'll just revisit this leadership thing, because I'm in agreement with Corey. Like, I think when it moves to the forum of party members. You look at Pierre Poilievre, he surely has a grip on that. So do I think he's going to lose that leadership review as a consequence of what happened today or what might happen over the course of the next few days? Probably not, even if it goes really south for him. But my God, stack these things up. He trails badly the prime minister when it comes to preferred prime minister and leadership approvals. He lost a majority. He lost an election that he was supposed to win with a thumping majority. He lost his own riding. Now he can't keep his caucus together. He's losing members of parliament. If he were to compound that by losing the majority, sure, he might win the leadership review. But what a wounded, weakened person he would be as a leader.
Yeah, but that would have to happen first.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, but that would have to happen first, and I think it's probably low. I think it's low probability that he loses another couple MPs. But look, it's never good news when this happens to you. It's as you say, Scott, we've been through this going both directions over the years, and it's always a bit of a gut punch for the leadership and the leadership team. But if your reaction to that is to really crack down on caucus and be very, very negative, you can make your problems worse. So it's kind of a delicate dance you have to do with caucus to keep them on side. It can't be too much carrot or too much stick. Otherwise, you risk making the situation worse.
Yeah.
I have just a few minutes. I wanted to get each of your reads on the budget. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
I was just going to say one of the challenges is a management challenge in a situation like this, when you know that there's a threat that others could bail. And so you have to figure out almost on a person by person, circumstance by circumstance basis, who responds to cajoling and an appeal that's positive, and who responds to negative reinforcement and the threat of the whip. And you got to really judge those things carefully, because when they go wrong, they could go badly wrong.
It's interesting that so much of this has been talked about for as many months as it has, like from a management perspective, like literally since Chris D'Entremont. I was told since the day he lost the bid to be speaker, he was despondent and became target number one. That is like months ago. I digress, but I think that's very interesting. I did want to get each of your takes, your read on the budget. We're a day after right now. It was billed as something generational, transformative, a sea change. Corey, did it deliver?
I don't think it was, this huge transformational budget. Like, it didn't feel like that to me. But then again, I'm not an economist. I'm a political hack. So maybe these changes are going to spur huge amounts of investment, and we'll all be shocked and surprised. I didn't find it was a terribly political budget, like in terms of the communication of it, and I don't know if you were to ask, even today or a few days from now, if anyone in Canada will have the first clue of what was in the budget and what it was all about, other than perhaps the deficit number. So I don't think it really punched through. And I think, the topic that we were just talking about, a floor crosser happening on budget day, was stepped on the budget message big time. And I wouldn't, I'm sure the Liberal caucus welcomes having another member, but I would sure not have preferred to have it on that day if I were them.
We spoke so many times in the lead up to the budget about sort of a somewhat convoluted narrative heading into it. Do you think the narrative was better defined or at all defined coming out, now that we actually have the document coming out of it, Scott?
I thought it was better defined on budget day, but there's still a big challenge. I mean, first of all, there was a hype man dimension to the pre-budget communications. It's going to be generational. This is a hinge moment. Oh my God, think about World War II type developments. So they excited people to the point where anything short of Krypton exploding was going to be a bit of a letdown. So I think that was a challenge. Then beyond that, I think when you look at this budget in terms of its actual measures, you can tell that the prime minister used to be a central bank governor, because when you look at it, it seeks to re-engineer, restructure the economy of Canada in response to legitimate concerns and pressures. The absence of the United States is that reliable partner that generates wealth and prosperity and jobs. So you want to restructure it. The challenge is that those measures, first of all, we don't know if they'll work. Second of all, if they do work, they take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And of course, the political calendar operates at a different level. So I mean, are there people at the local bus stop saying, I think it's important that they had all those impressive productivity and competitiveness measures, because I believe that that's going to spur investment in machinery over the course of the next 6 years, which will generate investment and attract investment by the time that my children are graduating from high school. That's the challenge. They've got to make this thing urgent, real, and street level for people in the post-budget sale.
I mean,
Pretty
who doesn't
tough
talk
to
about
do.
productivity at the dinner table? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's
take
just so macro. Anyway.
It is.
It might
Okay,
be
I got to
the
leave it there.
right
Save it for Sunday.
Save it
Save it for Sunday. We'll all convene again on Question Period. Thanks so much to Scott Reid and Corey tonight. Coming up on Power Play tonight, how did Liberals convince Chris d'Entremont to move to government benches? His new provincial seatmate in the Nova Scotia caucus, Attorney General Sean Fraser, will be here live after a short break. We're going to talk about the budget as well.
That's a testament to how miserable the attitude is in the Conservative Party currently, particularly with a miserable leader like Pierre Poilievre to attack Chris, because he's universally liked.
Chris is an outstanding MP. He's a great guy. This isn't about politics, it's about people.
We're all Team Canada in the Atlantic. We know that we got to put the country first, and that's part of being an Atlantic Canadian.
I'm very excited to welcome him to the National Caucus, the National Liberal Caucus. It's very good news.
What is your message to Conservatives thinking of crossing the floor?
You're always welcome if you like the Liberal ideology.
Welcome back to Power Play. In our top story tonight, the minority Liberal government has picked up a seat with Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont crossing the floor from the Conservatives, which means the Liberals are now just 2 seats short of a majority government, a political coup that all broke just after the Prime Minister's first federal budget was tabled. How did it happen? And what more can we learn about the budget? Joining us now on both those topics from just outside the House of Commons is Justice Minister Sean Fraser. Minister, pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
I have to ask you about Mr. d'Entremont because, of course, you're both from Nova Scotia. Did your party promise Mr. d'Entremont anything in exchange for him crossing the floor?
Look, not to my knowledge. I've gotten to know Chris over the years, and this is a decision that Chris has taken. He's made pretty clear in public that he thinks that the leadership of Prime Minister Carney has positioned the government well to better support his community than his former party. And for Chris, from the moment I met him, it's always been about what's good for his community. We had the opportunity years ago to work together on a project in the town of Yarmouth, where he comes from. He and the local Liberal MLA, Zach Churchill, were both advocating for this at the same time. They brought us down, we hosted an event, and it was an announcement done in collaboration with people who were at the time working within different parties. What I took from that experience was that Chris is a guy that is above partisan politics. He's about what's good for his community, and anybody who takes that approach is a value add to the government caucus and to Canadian politics more broadly. So we're thrilled to have him.
Were you involved, Minister, in any of the discussions or efforts to bring him over to the Liberals?
Look, my engagement with Chris, really dating back years, was always more about what issues was community wrestling with? How can the government help? Certainly expressed an interest initially jokingly years ago. If he ever had wished to join the government caucus, we'd be more than happy to have him. But those conversations really didn't focus on the politics. They focused on the policies that would have an impact on the people that we both represent in rural Nova Scotia. To the extent that there was pressure applied on Chris, I don't think that's the kind of thing that influences him. The real belief that he has that he's better positioned to serve his community is what's justifying his decision. And he's an honest, hardworking guy. And whatever conversations we may have had over the years may have communicated an openness to have someone like him working alongside us in government benches. But this is a decision that Chris has taken for his community, not one that he's been forced into by anybody, Liberal or Conservative.
No, and I didn't mean to intimate that he's forced into it. I just wondered if you were, given that your proximity and your already established relationship, if you were part of formal efforts to woo him.
Look, we've had a few conversations over the years, as I've alluded to, about potentially working together one day. But this is not something over the last few days that has transpired with me personally poking Chris to do it. This is after, I'm sure, a period of deep reflection for Chris about his own political philosophy, the opportunity that he has to make a difference. And these are difficult decisions for a lot of people. But in my view, I think Chris has made a courageous one and the right one.
He suggested that there could be other Conservative MPs who follow suit and make a similar decision. I'm hoping I can ask you, and hopefully you will answer point blank. Are you aware of any?
Look, you hear rumors about town. I'm not chasing anybody right now, trying to convince them to take a different decision. We are too focused right now on trying to implement the policies that we've just put into the federal budget. To the extent that others are inspired by the work of government and want to join because they believe in the work of government, of course, they would be more than welcome. I think it would be a potential distraction if the government spent all of its energy trying to recruit new members. I think we would be better served by focusing on getting the job that we've been elected to do done. And if others are inspired to join us as the result of the policies that we're putting forward, the work that we're doing, of course, we'd be more than happy to have them. But right now, the focus has to be on this budget, which is about investing in communities to grow the economy.
Okay, excellent, because that's exactly what I want to ask you about, Minister. In advance of the budget, your government billed it as, quote, transformational, generational, and a sea change. The increase in capital spending, for example, beyond what was already promised, only amounts to about 0.2% of GDP. And the savings, on the other hand, are only at a level about 1/3 of the scope of what the 1995 budget brought in, which was heralded at the time for its work on that side of the ledger. How does any of that, Minister, amount to a sea change?
Well, you got to look at what options the government could have considered when you're trying to achieve savings so you can make bigger investments to help grow the economy. We certainly could have taken the approach that was taken in the mid-90s, but that would have required us to slash transfers for things like healthcare to the provinces. We instead have made a decision to invest more, including in provincial healthcare infrastructure with this budget. What we wanted to do was focus on the programs that we observed not to be having their intended impact. Each of us in Cabinet was asked to go through an exercise to assess which programs, which policies were costing taxpayers money, but not delivering the outcomes that we wanted to see. Those programs will be phased out, some through organic sunsetting periods. There will be some attrition, some early retirements offered to folks in the public service. But what it's done is it has freed up capital that allow us to make investments that are going to help grow the economy. Investment tax credits for those who are going to bring a business to Canada. Tax deductions for those who are going to buy a new piece of equipment to scale up. Investments in infrastructure where they're going to put people to work in the short term, but create a stronger economy in the long term. The impact that this budget is going to have over the next decade or number of decades is extraordinary when you look at the opportunity to build the kind of economy that will generate productivity and revenue for generations to come.
Minister, I'll put to you again, though. What exactly is extraordinary about using infrastructure spending to stimulate the economy, about taking tax write-offs to incentivize business investment? Both of those things I can remember former Prime Minister Stephen Harper introducing. And as recently as 2018, the Trudeau government, of which you were a prominent member, also introduced the ability to write off different pieces of equipment that was actually broader in scope and more immediate than what you are pitching. So again, like, what is extraordinary or transformative or generational about using old ideas and just pitching them as something new?
Well, I would disagree that these are simply old ideas being pitched as something new. You can look, for example, not only to the fact that you might be using a tool that certainly has existed before with investment tax credits, but using it to tap into new and emerging sectors in the economy, whether that's critical minerals, whether that's adopting sovereign infrastructure when it comes to AI, to ensure as the trade disruptions that we've seen globally have an impact on our ability to control our economy, to control the data that helps power the economy. We're not just putting more money into things, but ensuring that it builds a level of sovereignty to the economic decisions that we're going to be able to take for the next number of generations. In addition to these major investment tax credits that will attract new industries, when you actually see the deduction allowing people to immediately write off the full value of investments, certainly that's been done in different ways before, but not necessarily in the same way for the same industries to the same scale. You're also seeing an unprecedented investment really outside of the great wars of the previous century in the Canadian Armed Forces that are not only going to offer a pay raise to men and women in uniform, but it's going to create a defence industrial strategy to ensure that more Canadians are put to work in good paying jobs when we make those investments. The list of examples continues, but I don't want to exhaust our time in the conversation on this topic alone.
I certainly do take your point on defense spending because it is markedly more significant than anything we've seen previously. If I put that aside, though, and look at all the other things you're announcing that you say will have a material impact, really, I guess, 5 years out or more on Canadians' lives, don't take my word for it. I look at the analysis from Desjardins, which said if Canadians were hoping for a transformative or generational budget, they will be disappointed with the Government of Canada's budget 2025. The Bank of Montreal, much of the stimulus in the budget consists of measures that were already known, so it is unlikely to cause a sharp revision of economic growth forecasts. The pitch from your government is what we're doing here is so unique, you are going to see the economy grow in ways that you haven't before. The Bank of Montreal is saying we're not even going to revise our forecast based on what we saw in this budget.
Well, you look at some of the examples of the game-changing policies that are in the budget, and they may have been announced a month ago, but still form part of the strategy going forward. Take, for example, the new approach to home building. Certainly, I was involved previously with policies designed to help build more homes, but the creation of a federal agency through Build Canada Homes to ensure that the government is able to act essentially as a developer, leveraging all of its tools at once, backed by a $13 billion capital investment, is a different way of doing things that I think is going to have a positive impact, not only on housing outcomes, but on productivity that's going to drive change within the sector, embracing more manufactured homes. It's this kind of different thinking that allows us to take control of the economy here in Canada in a way that people did not feel was under control over the last few years, particularly coming out of the pandemic, that sets this budget apart from many other similar efforts or different policies that have been put forward in previous years.
But Minister, you were in charge of housing through those previous years. Why now should Canadians listening tonight trust that a new agency will do what you were unable to do?
Well, last year, we did move forward with some of the most ambitious housing policies, and you don't have to take my word for it. There's plenty of housing experts who would validate that, that represented the largest housing investments that we've seen in a number of generations. But we have the opportunity to take things a step further without undoing some of the good programs that were put in place previously. Actually having the government pool together, and I was part of the conversations, believe it or not, that led to the creation of this agency before the last federal election, in conversations with our now Prime Minister Mark Carney, to actually figure out how we can best leverage all of the resources that the federal government has at its disposal. When we have access to federal land, when we have access to low-cost financing, when we have access to grant programs to help non-market housing put a roof over the head of the most vulnerable, we figure that we can in-house have a greater impact on that key part of the sector that's not necessarily going to benefit from improvements in market housing. Politics is a sector where you have to focus on continued improvement. Canadians would not accept that you rest on laurels of years gone by. They want to know how you're going to address the challenges that we're facing today and continue to scale the efforts, even in areas that are having some positive returns.
Okay, I'm out of time. I appreciate your time as always, Minister. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
At you too. Attorney General Sean Fraser. After a quick break, our front bench is here. We've got a whole lot to unpack on the budget, on floor crossings. Sharon Carr, Laura D'Angelo, Sebastian Skamsky, and Jamie Ellerton are with me in just 2 minutes. Stay right there.
I didn't find I was represented there. That my ideals of an Easterner, of a red Tory, I mean, quite honestly, of trying to find ways to find solutions and help your community rather than trying to oppose everything that's happening. And I think that's the opportunity that's being offered by Prime Minister Carney and the government caucus is to help find solutions at this critical time for Canada.
Chris D'Entremont there speaking for the first time on his decision to switch political teams. D'Entremont is now a member of the Liberal caucus after crossing the floor from the Conservatives yesterday, just after the federal budget was tabled. A Conservative MP since 2019, D'Entremont won his Nova Scotia seat by just 533 votes over the Liberal candidate in this year's federal election. CTV News went to the riding of Acadie Annapolis, and reaction from constituents there was mixed.
I was a bit shocked, yeah, because I've known him for quite a long time. I was in Rotary with him back in 2004 or 5 when he was working with Neil LeBlanc, which was Conservative provincially, and then he went provincial and then federal.
I'm thrilled because I think that he's a good representative, and so it's going to be a plus for the Liberals to have him on their team.
I'm not very happy about that. I'm not very much impressed with the Liberals. They have done a lot of harm to the country.
Now, interestingly, D'Entremont also suggested that there could be more floor crossers following suit. And you got to remember, Pierre Poilievre is facing a leadership review in January. So much for the front bench to talk about tonight. Sharon Carr is a CTV News political analyst. She's former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Laura D'Angelo is with Enterprise Canada and previously worked in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office. Jamie Ellerton is the principal at Kanaptis and worked for Minister Jason Kenney during the Harper government. And rounding us out this evening, Sebastian Skamsky was former Director of Media Relations to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Hello, everyone. Happy Floor Crosser Wednesday. Laura, I'll start with you. In your view, how big of a deal is this one?
I think this is a pretty big deal for Pierre Poilievre, who's facing a leadership review in January, right? I think this is a pretty direct reflection of his leadership style, as Chris D'Entremont has said himself, that he didn't like that leadership style. I think this coming on the heels of Pierre Poilievre's comments about the RCMP, which put a lot of people off, and as you and I talked about on radio earlier today, doesn't really help the party get to where they want to go. I think that this is a big deal for him. It's going to be a much bigger deal if more members cross the floor, and if the news cycle continues to be what it was today, which is names flying around that sound pretty credible to be considering leaving his party.
Two of those names, Sebastian, I'll throw over to you. My instinct is that your feelings on this are quite precise. Two of those names, Matt Genereux from Edmonton and Dominic, why is the last name escaping me at the moment, but she's a Quebec MP. She put out a video. Matt Genereux put out a statement. It's not me. It's not me. Dominic Vien. Sebastian, what is going on here, and how big of a deal is it from where you sit?
I think it's important to remind your viewers that Mr. D'Entremont made this decision driven by his professional self-interest. It's expected, seemingly, from politicians that they will put themselves first, but it is unfortunate when it happens in such a blatant way. Mr. D'Entremont, in speaking with Politico, who broke this story, was clear that this was simply about the fact that he was unable to become elected deputy speaker, and he even mused about his desire to have a better likelihood in the upcoming election. So I think it's important to put in that context and understand that unfortunately, this is something that a conclusion he came to just a month and a half ago, having attacked the Liberal government and Prime Minister Carney, ironically enough, about the size of his deficit spending and the negative impact it has on the constituents in his riding. So it's a betrayal, really, of the Canadians and the constituents who voted and elected him to stand up to the government, to fight for lower prices on food, lower prices of homes, and affordability in general.
On principle, I 100% understand that viewpoint, Sharon. Politically, what do you think it says?
I think it says everything about Pierre Poilievre, and it says nothing about loyalty to a party. Listen, this is not the first time we've talked about it. This is not the first time I've heard about it. And it's also not the first time it's happened before. We see floor crossings happen. It's not something that happens too frequently, but it does happen. And I do think that this is purely an indication of how people within the party feel about Pierre Poilievre. Now, he's an excellent communicator, but he's polarizing. Like Laura said, his comments about the RCMP really struck a chord with a lot of people within the party. And, you know, there's been names that have been floating around for weeks now. We talked a bit about this a few weeks ago when there were speculations originally about a floor crossing. And I think, again, this has a lot to do with how people are feeling, who their representative is, and who their leader is. And all politics, to a certain extent, is a local. So, of course, you're going to get people in ridings who will have mixed opinions about whether or not someone they voted from a specific party crosses the floor. But also, a lot of people just want a good elected official who has principles and values. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And listen, we're probably going to hear more names popping around. I'm not surprised by the names we've seen. People like Matt Genereux are actually very reasonable, centrist type of conservatives. There's a lot of conservatives that I talk to, and he's someone that I actually find to be very reasonable, very thoughtful, and actually just generally a good person and a good representative. So I'm hearing a lot of talk in Ottawa that there is going to be more crossings that are coming. I know we saw this statement that came out earlier today from his office, but what I would say is that I think that we're going to see more coming up in the next couple days, couple weeks, and a lot of that is even kind of clear if you look at what's happening internally in the Conservative Party. Word on the street is there was a lot of hustle and bustle around what was happening in the opposition leader's office last night around strategy. So to be determined.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How significant do you think it is for the party if it stays at this one individual, Jamie, versus if there are others? And what do you imagine is happening behind the scenes to ensure that it does just stay with Chris d'Entremont?
Yeah, undeniably, Vashti, this is obviously incredibly disruptive. There's a lot of people who feel a really personal sense of betrayal. But I think the more you hear Conservatives kind of railing against him now in the coming weeks, all it's going to do is feed oxygen into the story and remind Canadians that a Conservative MP crossed the floor and joined the Liberals. And I don't think that's helpful to the Conservative cause right now. I think if you're Pierre Poilievre meeting with your senior strategy group, I think you need to, one, obviously go back and do your homework and look at every member of caucus, reach out to them, have those points of contact, who's in their good books, who are they more likely to take overtures from, and make sure that this isn't actually going to become a trend, because then it truly becomes an existential problem, I think, for Pierre's leadership. If it's one, I really don't think it's going to have that big of an impact. But the other piece, instead of talking about the deficit today, instead of debating the future of the country and the country's finances, we're talking about a floor crosser. And so Pierre Poilievre is going to have to somehow find a channel changer to really turn the page on this quickly and get back to holding the government to account so that he can be back on his front foot rather than back on his heels.
Do you think that's true, Laura?
If Pierre Poilievre wants to change the story and not have it be about his leadership and the flaws there, I think he does have to change the channel, because right now it's been a pretty great news, almost 48 hours now for the Liberals, and hopefully that continues.
You look glowing. I
am
will
glowing.
Have to
This is great.
As opposed to other weeks, yeah.
It's been 25 hours. It was 4
Sebastian.
p.m. when it broke yesterday. It is now 5:30.
Yeah, you're right.
Fair enough.
Good correction. Sebastian, the last word goes to you, because you had talked in principle, and like I said, I totally understand that view. I think some of his constituents, if not many, will share it. But from a political perspective, you had a front row seat to how parties maneuver around various crises, around issues. What will you be watching for in the next little while to see how this one is navigated?
Well, I think we saw an incredible rallying of support around Mr. Poilievre from caucus members today. People like Michael Chong, Michael Barrett, and really everyone in between on the spectrum. So again, I think this is really, and unfortunately, an isolated incident with Mr. d'Entremont, who will have a lot of time to think this through and understand that this kind of betrayal of his constituents, of the values that he held for so many decades, and especially ran under 7 months ago, is really unacceptable. And I think the people of his riding in the next election will have a say in that.
Well, how soon is that election, guys? That's the subject of our next discussion after a short commercial break. We're going to take a deep dive into the budget, both from a content perspective, but also political. Short of any additional floor crossers, is this thing going to pass with opposition support? That's what we'll tackle next. Stay right there with our front bench.
This budget, with its record deficit outside of COVID, is a deficit twice as the size of the one Trudeau left behind, and $16 billion bigger than the Prime Minister promised.
This budget has 75% of the measures are for our sovereignty, to protect our borders, to protect our communities, to protect our way of life.
The Prime Minister's budget increases taxes on food production, with the industrial carbon tax on farm equipment, fertilizer, storage bins, and food processing plants.
The Canadian Climate Institute has done the analysis, and the impact of the industrial carbon tax on inflation is zero.
Debate in the House of Commons just one day after the Carney government tabled its first ever budget. For weeks, the Prime Minister sold that budget as generational and transformative. So did it come as advertised? And now that the Liberals have one more MP, will the budget pass? Our front bench is back to talk about that. Sharon Carr, Laura Stone. Oh, no, not Laura Stone. Laura D'Angelo. Good thing I'm just hair and teeth. I read what's on the prompter in front of me. Jamie Ellerton and Sebastian Skamsky. Jamie/Laura Stone. I just love Laura Stone so much. I got to keep saying her name. Jamie, I'll go to you first. Did this budget deliver as advertised?
I don't think it delivered as advertised. I think they probably oversold just how much was going to be coming down the pipeline to what would ultimately ended up being in this. But I do think the Prime Minister was able to accomplish in this. He has definitely now closed the book on Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. And this is very much Mark Carney's Liberal government on a go-forward basis. And I think he'll be held to account on that.
Do you think that was, Sharon, a major part of the political purpose or the political utility that Carney and the people around him saw in this budget? And does it, like, as in like an effort to really delineate themselves from the Trudeau government? And ultimately, do you think they were successful if that's what they did want to do?
Absolutely. I think that the biggest problem and issue that Prime Minister Carney has had to face since getting elected and taking office is the comparison to Justin Trudeau. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he lives rent-free in Pierre Poilievre's mind. And I think what we're seeing in this budget is Mark Carney's take on how he sees he wants to invest in the country. And listen, a lot of this has to do with the fact that Donald Trump has taken the global order, turned it upside down, and has made countries rethink how they're going to invest and how they're going to spend it to ensure their own sovereignty. So is this a page turner? I do think it's a page turner. Now, the budget still has to pass. It has to go through all these readings and processes. And I think that there's going to be a lot of debate and question around whether it's going to pass. But I personally, and from what I've heard from people, do think this has more of a Mark Carney touch versus a Justin Trudeau touch. And if you'll remember, during Justin Trudeau's time, a lot of what he wanted to spend on was really different than what, say, Mark Carney would consider important. We're seeing public service cuts. We're seeing more focus on investment to build in sovereignty. And that was really different from the time when Trudeau was around. So I would say it's a page turner, but we're pretty sure going to constantly be compared to Trudeau because that's who Pierre Poilievre's obsessed with.
Sebastian, if this budget lands a message, what is it?
Well, I want to say I agree with Sharon on the fact that this is really Mark Carney's budget. He has differentiated himself from Justin Trudeau by doubling the amount he's spending over 5 years compared to Justin Trudeau. This really has been a hit out of the park for Mr. Carney, who has, in a wonderful economist's suit and tie, sold a bill of goods to Canadians that is just going to drive up the cost of living and make life less affordable for the average person. Just to put some perspective on this for your viewers, perhaps the message they will receive is that every single dollar in GST taxes garnished from them is going to service the debt that Prime Minister Carney has saddled them with. That the debt on the cost of servicing the debt, rather, is more than the federal government is spending on healthcare transfers. I mean, this is an astronomical amount of money that is going out the door. Precisely for what reason is unclear, but we know that the end outcome will unfortunately mean higher prices for Canadian consumers at the grocery stores and higher cost of homes and less money in their pockets.
The pitch from the government, Laura, appears to be, okay, maybe all of that is true, but what we are doing this for, or our intent is to significantly grow the economy. That, though, won't be happening overnight, and we've touched on this before, but we saw evidence of it, like the numbers were very stark in the budget. The material impact of that will take a very long time to reach Canadians. Were you surprised at all that there wasn't more in there for the interim, like something that around the dinner table people could have said to each other, hey, this is different from my life after this document?
It's a great question, right? Because you and I have talked about this a lot today. Justin Trudeau was very good at telling a story. Right? He was really good at putting pieces in the window with his budgets that were really great political sales pieces. That's not this budget. This isn't a political sales piece, and that's an uphill battle, right? This is a budget that is intended to help industry, to supercharge industry, to help grow the domestic economy because of the world order that has changed thanks to Donald Trump, to Sharon's point. It's not a sexy budget. It's not a budget with a lot of
Sharon
big
said it's a page turner.
pieces.
She's up there for 400 pages last night, I guess. Sexiest read of her life, yeah.
But I have some suggestions, Sharon. But it is a budget that is reflective, I think, of Mark Carney's, sober, hard, really focused governing style. And I think that is something that Canadians should consider deeply because that is what he ran on.
I got to ask you guys in the whatever time I have left about the politics of this. Yes, we just talked about the floor crossings, Jamie. So they're one seat closer, but ultimately they're not at majority. So they do need some sort of support if they can't get more floor crossers. Do you anticipate that they're going to be able to achieve that?
I've kind of been on the record on this show actually for a while now. I do ultimately think enough members will abstain while you'll have the Bloc and the Conservatives railing against it to kind of speak to their audience in terms of what they're trying to do. I don't think there's any real appetite for an election right now and anyone wants to go back to the polls. And there's nothing particularly egregious in here, I think, that's going to motivate opposition members to want to bring this government down before Christmas time. And the one thing I will say we'll do before Christmas time, I am definitely going to take Sharon up the street to Indigo and we're going book shopping because she's got to improve her nighttime reading.
Please. Yeah, do us the favor, please. Sharon, the last word to you on this. I think Jamie's on the money. I listened very closely as Don Davies stepped out of the House of Commons, the interim leader of the NDP, because that's where the movement would be. And he basically said, in our interview even, I'm open the door to abstention, open the door to supporting it. Did not come out and say, no, this thing is atrocious. I have to make sure our caucus votes against it, which to me kind of allows the writing to be on the wall, at least at this juncture, subject to change.
Yeah, listen, this budget was no 50 Shades of Grey, but what I will say is my bet is going to be that it will definitely pass. We have literally, I think, we're hearing a lot of rumors that there will be a potential other crossing, and my gut says we will get it passed. I don't think we're going to see the NDP playing any ball publicly, nor do I think we're going to see, we've already seen Elizabeth May come out and say she's going to vote against it, but I think there might be a little bit of gamesmanship, but it's not going to be around what the Liberals are going to give. I think there's just going to be some strategic absences, and should the budget not pass, my gut says it's going to be purely because someone goofed up the math or there was a fluke somewhere in terms of who shows up and who doesn't. But I really don't think that there's any real science to it right now.
Okay, I'm going to leave our conversation there. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
our wonderful front bench, Laura D'Angelo, also known as Laura Stone, Sharon Carr, Jamie Ellerton, and Sebastian Skamsky. Thanks, guys. We'll be right back with more Power Play after a short commercial break. Welcome back to Power Play. Our takeaway today is all about our top story, the possible defection of additional members of Parliament in the Conservative Party moving over to the Liberals. The big news 24 hours ago was Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont doing exactly that. The Prime Minister on the receiving end of questions today from reporters about if he has met with other Conservative MPs about that prospect. Have a listen.
I'm new to Parliament. My view is always I will talk to anyone. It's part of our job is to talk to each other. You get ideas. You learn a lot when you're listening more than you're talking. So we seek out different opinions. I do that. I do that with the premiers. I do it with other members of Parliament. We'll continue to do that.
Certainly not a no from the Prime Minister when asked if he's met with other MPs in the Conservative Party about the prospect of them moving over to the Liberals. Remember, the Liberals are right now 2 seats short of a majority. 2 of those Conservative MPs, Edmonton MP Matt Genereux and Quebec MP Dominic Vien, both came out today with public statements saying that they would not be crossing the floor. But speculation, of course, at this hour continues that there could be others. Chris D'Entremont himself suggested that could be the case. I'm going to leave Power Play there. Thank you so much for watching tonight. Our coverage continues next on CTV News Channel. Have a great night.